All right, I'm here in front of the Hopewell Church with Terry Ward. Now, this church is an interesting church because it was of its history of when it was built and how it was built. These beams right here are built out of surplus oil derrick parts, and I'm just going to pan up real quick so you can see the top of this. It was built very economically. Now, to tell you the story a little more in depth, I'm going to have Terry Ward kind of tell you about it. Terry, you mentioned to me that this parcel of land originally had something to do with the land rush of 1889 when Oklahoma was opened up to settlers. Tell me a little bit about that.
Mr. Pauley made the land run in 1889, and this was his quarter section of land that this building sits on. Was his original claim. And the story is that as praying one morning, he felt like he was supposed to donate an acre of land for a church. So this land was donated by a man who made the land run to be a church, and there has been a church here, not this building, but a church here since 1898.
Yeah, this was roughly started in, 1947?
This building itself was the started construction in 1945 or so, and the construction was in 47, and it was completed with volunteer help from farmers, oil field workers, people in the community. They built this. The total cost was $20,000, and it was finished in 1951.
And that was built by Bruce Goff?
The architect of this building was Bruce Goff, who was the head of the School of Architecture in Norman.
I understand is that the church lost its membership and fell into abandonment for a while, and now you're helping restore it. This red tile roof here, that's how its original color, but this is restored. It was gray at one point, and now it's red. That's part of the original restoration effort.
Yes, in the mid-70s, we remodeled the building. Needed re-roofing, and at that time, everything was about costs. And so they went from the original red color, which was part of Goff's, the red dirt of Oklahoma, making this in the form that it did. But they put the white shingles on. In the process over the years, there was asbestos on the inside of the building that was installed when we remodeled this building in the 70s to bring it up to modern standards. Then, over the process of time, we lost our air conditioning. Due to circumstances, we had to abandon the building, and we discovered that there was asbestos, and we couldn't do anything to the building. We couldn't even tear it down if we wanted to without removing asbestos. We raised that money, we removed the asbestos, and we've been over the last several years now. We have now re-roofed the building, and we're restoring, or actually rehabilitating, maybe the more exact word, to as much as we can to original standards. It's you can't restore it to the exact. You just can't get the materials, and it's not even possible. But anyway, in the spirit of, we are trying to restore this building.
Well, let's go inside and take a look, because the inside of this building is absolutely fascinating. And I'll give you a quick shot here of the cornerstone on the outside as we walk in. You can see, talks about how it was established. Anyway, we'll go inside, take a look. I think you'll be absolutely intrigued by the inside of this. Now, I noticed this stairwell inside here is a little bit unusual. I believe you mentioned that the stairwell was here and part of an existing church before this was built.
There was a church building here that used these concrete steps to enter the original church building that was built. I can't tell you when that building was built, but the original building was moved and the teepee church or the building was built over this using the original steps to the original building, and it is now the entrance into what Bruce Goff designed as an entry using, he was all about using the old and encompassing new, and so over the years, because of leaking and the nature of the building, the pipes in this building are the original surplus from oil field. Again, they used materials that were available locally as much as they could. It took 4 years approximately of volunteer labor by farmers and oil field workers and others in this community. Many that did not even go to church here got involved in building and being a part of building this building. In the 70s, it was remodeled. What you're seeing on this is not original. What you're seeing is partially a remodel in the 70s, but after we had the asbestos removed, you could now see the framing of the building and what you see here now. The roof, over the years, once we removed the asbestos, it was like the shingles began to fly off of this building. We would replace them, but soon it just, as a small congregation, we could not maintain this and build. We were building what we would call maybe a family life center, and we couldn't do both. So this building sat abandoned for quite some time. Just recently, in the last 3 years, with the help of Genco Roofing, a man named Thad Jennings, he provided all the material, not all the material was donated by another person, but they provided the labor, and we are now in the process of trying to enclose this building and then beginning to restore or reconstruct, rehabilitate from the inside out.
I noticed ahead there's still a mural there. Is that mural still part of the original church?
Yes, that was painted, and I can't tell you right now the name of the artist that did that, but that is original, and we maintained that through the remodel in the 70s. That mural is original, and the baptistry is original.
Now, I also noticed there's a chandelier there, and you said that came in later as it's not part of the original lighting, but it was a secondary chandelier that came in.
It was installed in the remodel time. The original lighting was pipe with pie plate type fixtures that hung from the ceiling, made it extremely hard to change bulbs, different things, but it was all a part of Goff's idea of using material that was available. Would you like for me to mention the back of this? Just for your information, there was a stairway up into that balcony area back here, and I don't know whether there's any. This was a bathroom, but the stairway went up into the balcony right
there
here and
like
up
a-
to there. You can't really get
And
there
did
now.
the choir or something
You
sing
know,
up there?
actually, only one time did I used to be the music director, and we had the choir up there during the Christmas program, but the choir actually sat up on the stage behind the podium down on the in the auditorium. So it really wasn't a choir. We're actually thinking about when we restore it, making it a prayer room. But or something up there at that time. See this white? That is what the original insulation upstairs looked like. Those buttons, silver buttons, were always, you could see them throughout the auditorium. You could see them on the ceiling here in the original. This room was a opening assembly area. There was classrooms all the way around. A nursery was one of these rooms here. The bathrooms were back here for the church, were in the back of this. It's all been torn out now. I was wanting to show you, you'll be amazed. I want to show you the size of the glass, because when you think, you see that glass, you think that it's much larger. I wish I could turn the light on for you. I don't know whether.
So we're in the storage unit here underneath the church, and there's actually some of the original glass here that went in the church. These were spares. So tell me a little bit about that.
We had one of the pipes up at the top of the structure that the welding broke loose and swung into the glass and broke one of the panes of glass up at the very top of the building. This is a spare. When we replaced the roof, we had to replace one of the panes of glass. And Ron Moore Company, they donated this glass, but they had a spare made in case we ever needed to replace another one. Why I think this is of interest is that the size of this glass, when you actually see it, looks very small compared to when you're looking up from the auditorium floor. The glass panes look much larger, and it's just part of the design of Bruce Goff that makes this so interesting, I think, to see how tall that is. I think from the very bottom of the basement to the top of that is like 80 feet tall. I believe from the flooring to the of the auditorium is approximately 60 feet, and it's pretty amazing, especially for a church, a small congregation back in the mid-40s, thinking about building a building such as this.
So I understand also you told me originally that there were some glass prisms that were hanging up here, and that when the sun, as you can see, is starting to get overhead, that when it would come in directly, that those prisms would light it up. Tell me a little bit about what happened with those prisms in the story behind that.
Well, hanging down from the pipe that the original light fixtures hung from were glass prisms, probably about 5 or 6 feet apart, that hung with a string, and there were several prisms on each string line. And as the sun, I was a child, grew up here, and I would lay in the chairs or in the I can't even think right now.
Pews.
Anyway, as a child, I would sit and watch as the sun would come up during the middle of the day, and usually towards the last part of a church service, would catch these prisms and put rainbows around the walls, which were white, and these strings of prisms would circle, and then they would turn around and go back the opposite direction, but the rainbows would show up on the walls, and as a child were, I guess, pretty kind of distracting, but they were very interesting to see, and it was a part of Goff's original design that made it pretty incredible and unique.
Now, one of the other things I noticed in part of the restoration is that there were some pews here, and as I look over here on the side, you can see that there are still some of the pews here, and they had some cabinets behind them, I guess for storing. You'll see some of the latches. Now, are they going to restore all these pews all the way around? You were telling me there were also other pews that there were some other rows that were kind of in the center of the church.
Yes, there were individual pews, but the back row of pews were designed with for the backs of them to drop out and to create a natural ventilation, because up at the top of this is a flat glass that was hydraulically controlled that would lift. And the original design was to have a natural, much like a teepee, an Indian teepee ventilation. It would draw air in and it would go out the top. And to a certain extent, that worked. But because of that flat glass, when the winds would blow in Oklahoma, as you know they do, one night I was in here as a child, the glass blew, that flat glass would blow up and rain blew in, and it was decided at that point we had to seal that off, and of course the natural ventilation didn't work, or wasn't working at that point when we had to do that. You'll see that the damage to this floor is because of the roof that over the years and during the time that we were trying to repair it, just couldn't keep it repaired. We couldn't afford to replace it or anything. And now we are trying to build up and brace up the flooring so that we can do scaffolding to do replacing some bolts to ensure the actual sealing off totally of to keep rain from coming in. And you can see the damage over the years of how the rain came in on this beautiful oak floor that was original. And so we're just trying to do, as we raise money, we have people doing things from the inside out now, trying to shore up this floor, trying to shore up and bring the integrity of the roof to not leaking, so that we can then again begin to finish and rehabilitate the interior of this building.
So now the restoration is still ongoing, and so if people wanted to help contribute to the restoration of this, how would they do that?
We have a foundation set up. It's a tax deductible. It's called the Hopewell Heritage Foundation, and donations would be made. You can go online and actually go on the website and you can make donations, but it's Hopewell Heritage Foundation. It's totally separate from the church that is located on the nearby, and we hope to restore this, and our belief is that this belongs to the community. It was built originally. We're wanting to open it up to community events, weddings, different type of receptions, make it a community center for this northwest part of Oklahoma City. There's no other building like it in this community. Historically, there is interest in this all over the world, literally. Bruce Goff was the architect of record, and saving this is become very important to us, and that is our desire to make it available for our children, our children's children, and to help establish the history of this community.
Well, thank you, Terry. This is absolutely fascinating, and I think there'll be a lot of people want to help out.